everybody. So thank you for joining me on this wonderful Wednesday evening. It is hump day, guys. So we've made it halfway through the week, and that is always an accomplishment, especially when, you're tired of work already. So thank you so much, everybody, again, for following along. As always, all the gratitude in the world. You guys make this worth the while every single day that I get up and get to do this. It is truly an honor for everybody who follows the show. So thank you guys so much. So before we get started, of course, let's get all the particulars out of the way like we usually do. Let's start off, of course, with YouTube, guys. So if you're watching us for the first time on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. You can check us out on YouTube at www.youtube.com/C/made from scratch broadcast. Like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button and then hit the notification bell. It'll let you know whenever we do plan new lives, whenever we are live, and whenever we do schedule new content and drop new content on the channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much. And of course, we're streaming live, of course, on Facebook, and you can check us out there as well at Facebook, www.facebook.com/Made from Scratch Podcast. A little bit different there. Believe me, we're streamlining to get this a little bit easier to handle because it's a lot to remember. But again, thank you so much, guys. If you're watching on Facebook, hit the like button as well. It will give you notifications whenever we do stream live and whenever we schedule new content. So if you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much. And of course, we're streaming live on Twitter via Periscope. You can check us out there at MFSB Live on Twitter. Do us a favor, follow us on Twitter. We follow back, and of course, drop it down in the comments. We always love it whenever we get live comments during the show. And of course, we are streaming live right now on LinkedIn. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, thank you guys so much. Send out a connection request with me. If you're not connected with me, I try to answer those just about as personally as much as I can whenever I do get it. So thank you so much, guys, if you're watching on LinkedIn. And of course, we are streaming live now on Twitch, and you can check us out at Twitch at Made from Scratch Broadcast on there. And then we're doing a separate thing that we do on Instagram, and you can check us out there live at Made from Scratch Broadcast on Instagram. It is a little bit different. It is just me usually that you'll see. It's kind of behind the scenes sort of thing. So if that's what you want to see, you can see me there. If not, then you can tune into the regular channels. So guys, thank you so much again for joining along, and always all the gratitude in the world. So let me get started about this evening's guest and kind of give him a little bit of an introduction. He's an experienced trial attorney and a personal injury attorney in Tampa, Florida, who has practiced personal injury law, personal injury law and criminal litigation in the Tampa Bay area for the past 20 years. He earned his bachelor's degree from fine arts, of all things, from Montclair State University in Montclair, New Jersey in 1991, and his Juris Doctorate from Stetson University in St. Petersburg. This is why I want to have him on, because he's one of those people that's a mix of, business and creativity, because he does have a background. Does have a background in theater. So that was kind of interesting. And shout out to the wonderful, awesome, always awesome Francine Sinclair for bringing me this evening's guest. So guys, do me a big favor and help me welcome to the show my guest for the evening. Come on, there you go. Pull it up, Mr. Christopher Debari. How are you doing, Christopher?
Hey, good. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. So, one of the things that I loved whenever Francine kind of mentioned me to you, she said, "Well, I got somebody I want to talk to. He's an attorney." I said, "Okay, cool. I don't mind that at all." Hello, Miss Relayval. She's watching on Instagram. So, but then she said, it's kind of interesting. He's got one of those. He's got a background in theater, and I go, "Wow." I mean, that's a pretty interesting transition to go from having a background in doing theater and getting a bachelor's in fine arts, and then going into, trial, becoming an attorney. So kind of walk us through that process a little bit and kind of introduce yourself a little bit to the crowd.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I grew up in Jersey and attended Montclair State University. I was a dramatic lit major, and I really enjoyed that. And Remember this is 50 pounds ago, long hair, and looked a little different back in those days. But I wanted to be a teacher originally, but then started getting jobs on TV and in theater and modeling and things like that. So it turned out to be fun to pursue it for a few years. So I did it for probably about 5-6 years professionally. And it was great. And it was always great work when you could get it. And the peaks were always high, but the valleys were low, and sometimes they were long. You kind of always knew that I would want to probably go to law school eventually. And around the age of 25, I started thinking, maybe you should start thinking about that a little more. And it came close to some really great things. And you keep having these opportunities. And of course, when you're not as connected as some other people, you don't get them. So
of course,
you're not getting any younger. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to be the actor who's a waiter anymore. I'm going to be the actor who's a lawyer now.
Why not, right?
Yeah, moved 1,000 miles down here and went to law school, and thinking, well, I guess I'm not really going back to acting now because I'm fully committed to this other lifestyle. But I really got into the law because I like it. And there are a lot of things you can do for a career and to make money, and I kind of like helping people, so that's why I wound up doing what I do. And the fact of the matter is the whole presentational aspects of what you learn when you do theater and you do TV, and the technicality of it and the presentational nature of it, it all translates nicely to the experience of litigation.
And that's pretty interesting. That's one of the things you see, like actors on television when they're portraying these roles of being in the courtroom, how well it comes off. So I'm figuring, if you have experience before doing it and then actually translating it into real world, I'm pretty sure it's had its advantages. So, let me ask you first of all about the type of lawyer that you wanted to become. Did you pick that out as just the profession? To get in that direction, or was it something that kind of manifested its way as you went along in studying law?
Well, I have an older brother that's he was a personal injury attorney. His name is Tom Debari. He's a full-time mediator now in Polk and Hillsborough counties and pretty much all over the place. And he's been in the business for over 25 years. And, I kind of followed in his footsteps. I went to Stetson as he did. When I was a little younger, I went and attended some of the classes, so I figured, it was a good place to go. I thought that the teacher to student ratio was nice. It was a good experience. Learned a lot just from attending his classes, and thought, this is what I'd like to do. But personal injury kind of came naturally to me because it was what he did. But I started my career as a prosecutor. I was doing a lot of criminal. I prosecuted, and they used to like to stick me for long periods of time in divisions, like here, go to domestic for 9 months, here, go to traffic for 9 months. And so, but interestingly enough, when you switch sides and you start defending those cases, it's like, well, I've prosecuted more DUIs than most of the people that were my contemporaries, and I've prosecuted more domestics. And when it comes time to defend them, you've seen basically every variety of it. You're in a much better position. That's always been part of my practice. And it helps a little bit too, because you have people that are your injury clients who get in trouble, and you have people who get in trouble who become your injury clients. So they tend to feed each other nicely. It's nicely kind of synergistic sometimes.
Yeah. So that's interesting though that you've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. So one of the things that usually kind of interests me is you said you were also a mediator. Is that correct?
I'm also a certified circuit court mediator. I've gone through the training. I've been certified probably for got to be close to 8 years now. I don't go to mediation typically as anything other than a plaintiff's lawyer right now. Mm-hmm. I don't act as mediator at mediations. And while you're full-time plaintiff's practice, you're not going to be, the insurance adjusters for the defense aren't really going to want to use you as a mediator. So I don't really do much mediation right now. I could, but just as when you're practicing full-time plaintiff's personal injury, it's just not something that's going to be happening.
Yeah. So, and then of course, kind kind of jumping back to your background as an actor, I always wonder, because talking about actors portraying lawyers, how close do a lot of them get to what it's really like to be an actual lawyer in a courtroom, as opposed to more of it being just this big, huge, dramatic thing that that Hollywood loves to film and make it seem like it's a lot more glorious and hardcore. So kind of tell me a little bit about that, because that's always one of the interesting aspects. You see, because I've seen like Tom Cruise in when he was in this thing. Why is it slipping my mind? Yes.
No, not Officer and Gentleman. The other one.
No.
Wow, it's escaping me too.
David.
You mean the firm, or do you mean the military one?
Yeah, the military one.
Wow, A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men. Yes. Right. So you see how they over the top, real brash. I mean, so is that what it's really like in a courtroom? Something like that was really tense.
Well, I mean, in that movie, you were in a sort of a military tribunal, which is probably more reserved than you're going to see, and he was really going for it because he was trying to pull something emotional out of the witness, out of Jack Nicholson's character. Like, I watch Law and Order and shows like that, and I'm like, I'll just sit there and I'll be like, objection. Jury can't hear this. So I kind of technically pick it apart a little bit in my head, but as far as how the actors are, I mean, just like a lawyer, an actor is going to have his style. So I don't think I've ever seen a lawyer on television that couldn't be a lawyer in a courtroom. It's just that what really goes on is it's real informationally intensive. You don't really see a jury being selected and the dynamic of that, which is actually one of the more interesting parts of trial work. You just see and these 2.5 minute long opening statements and closing arguments. It's like, I would just be barely done introducing myself before I do. Right. Yeah. So it doesn't really. But they've got to condense it. They have to make it appealing to an audience. Whereas when you're a jury in the audience, you're kind of stuck there for as long as the trial goes for.
Yeah, exactly. And because that's always interests me about how close it is what we see on film as close to like we see in real life, and kind of seeing that you've had the perspective of both. That's why I always like to ask whenever somebody has done that, kind of to like compare and contrast it, because somebody again who's been an athlete and then somebody who portrays an athlete, there's two different aspects to it. So you being an actor and now a lawyer, and then somebody being an actor trying to portray a lawyer, that's always been one of the things that I when I talk about it, and I go, I wonder if that's really spot on when they do that things. And you're already telling me that you're sitting there going objection.
Yeah, it's got to be palatable for a television audience. But I'll tell you the truth. If I could have Aaron Sorkin writing my stuff that I present to a jury, I'd be very happy about that. A guy like that can get on. When you put Aaron in front of a jury, if he presents anything like he writes, he's going to tear the opposition to pieces. The guy is so amazing with his pen that sometimes you look for inspiration. In fact, I actually once used a tactic that Tom Cruise used with Kevin Bacon in A Few Good Men. I used it in a trial and it came off actually really, really good. Where he's got the book of the Marine Corps Code of Conduct. Kevin Bacon's questioning Noah Wiley, and then he walks away with it, and Tom Cruise grabs it out of his hand and uses it. I actually did that to a kid in Philadelphia who was trying to make a point with 2 cups of water, and it just appealed to me that if he's walking back to counsel table all proud of himself, and I walk up and take those things out of his hand and use them, then it may just kind of make him look like he didn't have a game. It just seemed to kind of go off really nice. So, I actually found some inspiration from the movies. Interestingly.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, of course. So let me, well, I want to go into one of the things that you said about the jury process, but before we go into that real quick, just one more time on your theater, have you ever thought about going back into acting at any point? Has it ever broached the subject or anything saying, maybe I want to write again, or maybe I want to, write about being a lawyer, seeing how you've had a theater background?
Well, it's always something that kind of tickles you a little bit. It's always in the back of your mind, but I would be playing very different parts right now than I would have been playing when I was in my 20s. We actors are kind of a little bit about ego. So, if you go in there and they're like, well, we think you'd be great for the grandfather, you're going to be like, yeah, maybe not. Sexy grandfather.
Yeah.
If I'm a George Clooney grandfather,
there you go.
Then cool. But, I don't want to be,
Uncle Buck, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Perfect. Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck.
Yeah, you don't want to be Uncle Buck. You want to be George Clooney. Of course, everybody wants to be George Clooney. So kind of walk me through a little bit about the jury process. You said that was one of the more interesting aspects about it that a lot of people aren't familiar with unless they've actually been in a courtroom and been part of a jury. I mean, I don't know. So it's kind of new to me, which is why I'm asking.
Well, I mean, particularly nowadays, I mean, so many of the people that are in the jury pool, they've been fed what the insurance industry has been feeding them for the past 20, 30 years. They become indoctrinated. They become tort reformed, more or less. And, and you wind up with this dynamic of 1/3 of the people on a jury may want to help your client. The other third think your client deserves nothing no matter what. And then you've got that middle third that you sort of have to convince your case. You're not going to change the other people's minds, but, you need to get at those. So when we're choosing juries, we're introducing the dynamic of the case to the jury during the process so that we can not so much pick the best jury, but we've got to get rid of the worst candidates for our side. And while we're doing that, the defense is doing that too.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the interesting things. So like I said, we're just trying to eliminate the worst options most of the time, rather than just handpick the best people. We're trying to do damage control a lot of the time in jury selection. So that's one of the things about it. But a good attorney will try to basically make his case in jury selection.
Yeah. So, and another question that I've been thinking about when I was thinking about talking to you was, what is one of the biggest settlements you've ever won as far as for one of your clients? I mean, not to have to disclose, but I mean, ballpark, something,
I mean, you're talking, it's not so much trial verdicts, but, settlements, you talk like $1 million, that ballpark. I mean, that's I'm a small practice. There are guys out there that settle med mal cases, medical malpractice, or bad faith cases for $5 million, $10 million, $20 million verdicts. That's just.
Well, I got another.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just gonna say I got another woman who's actually a lawyer as well who follows me along, and she's saying about that she has a producer in her area that needs to connect with somebody because she needs help on legal thrillers.
Oh wow!
So, I mean, that's something that kind of merges, a little bit of your background, law, and of course, having a theater background. I mean, so saying that's small, there's guys that do a lot more money. How long does it, because you hear for example, on news stories where somebody wins this huge awarded case, right? And they tell you, well, the pay, settlement was, on the case was $5 or $6 million, or whatever. How long does that usually take to go to the process of actually saying before a client might receive any kind of settlement or anything at all?
Well, the cases that tend to be the higher money cases are going to be the more complicated, with more severe injury, with higher insurance limits. So those cases, treatment is ongoing with clients from they get injured 1 year, and the statute of limitations to file a lawsuit is a 4-year statute of limitations for negligence cases, auto crashes. So if you're going to sue another driver, you got 4 years to do it. If you're going to sue an uninsured motorist carrier, you've got 5 years to do it. Usually do it at the same time if it's in the same litigation. So, usually a person treats for a time, and then you decide if they want to settle. If the insurance company can offer a number that you can accept and the client wants it, or you can negotiate something, then you don't necessarily have to litigate the case. But if the insurance company is undervaluing the case, If the client's expectations are too high, part of my job is to try to manage my clients' expectations and get them to understand the value based upon what is and not what we want. But you can have cases that drag on for 5, 6, 7 years. And then if you win a verdict, then there could be a motion for new trial. There can be motions for remittitor. There can be appeals, and the appeals process itself can drag on. So it can take some time.
Oh, okay.
So long answer to a short question.
That's okay. That's one of the things that, of course, you want to find out, because again, not dealing with that, but like whenever you see huge huge drug settlements, right, with companies, I think what was the Roundoff was one of the big ones, right, where
Roundup,
yeah. So how, in a case like that, I mean, how long would something like that take to actually reach the clients, as opposed to they're going to appeal it again, or whatever.
Well, I mean, if settlements are usually confidential in nature, so I couldn't get into the details of any one particular settlement. But if you settle a case with a company, if they decide they don't want to continue the trial, then it shouldn't take long. I mean, like a typical auto case, you settle a claim, the insurance company send a check, the check clears, and you can then disperse to a client. But in a big case, it can sometimes take years. If the case is litigated and goes to trial and goes to appeal, that client's not going to see any money until the end of whatever process, whatever track that case is on. So if it's a case that settles and there's a mutual settlement and it's agreeable to both parties, and whether confidential or not, the client's going to get paid sooner. If it's sometimes settlements are structured. You get a structured settlement company involved, and a client will get paid a certain amount of money over a course of years to make sure they have enough money for the rest of their lives. So kind of different ways the money can even come to the client. But typically, we settle a case, we disperse the settlement, we go to trial and win a verdict, and that verdict translates to a judgment in favor of the client. Then shortly after that, but that process of getting to that point is really the thing that's time consuming.
So and then of course, you were stating earlier that you had done criminal law. So what was one of the, you kind of laid it out a little bit, but what were some of the things that you learned while doing that have kind of helped you a little bit down the line in your career right now, like practicing injury law? I mean, there's things that you can take away from it? Or is that two different sort of ballparks that you're working in?
Yeah, well, we have an old saying that in criminal law, we're civil to one another. In civil law, we're criminal to one another, because there's a lot more cooperation that seems to go on between a prosecutor and a public defender than ever really seems to go on between private plaintiffs and defense counsels. The insurance industry is a tough industry. They play hardball. They don't give their money out freely. It's like trying to get money from the church. You have to be able to convince them that they need to give it to you. But I got my initial trial experience as a state attorney. So going to trials on domestic cases, on DUIs, on felonies. I was a prosecutor of felony child abuse and cases like that. So I learned that children never lie. When these kids are up there telling their story and they're young, and you can't believe the things that they've had to go through, and there they are being very brave and telling you. And then you've got the stepfather coming in and saying, "Oh, the kid's crazy, the kid's a liar," and you're like, "Yeah, maybe not." But you learn that sometimes it's rough, and sometimes you're dealing with people that are hurt or injured or emotionally scarred. It's serious business.
Yeah, that's interesting that you talk about that. Because a lot of the times we're never going to see that, of course, because they're kids, right? But was that hard? Was that hard for you? Was that kind of gut wrenching to hear some of those tales that some of the kids told?
Well, I mean, I was a grown man in my early 30s, so while it pained me to have to hear it, the children were brave, and I admired them, and I mean, it was never nearly as hard on me as it was on them and on the relatives that were concerned about the child, rather than those that were taking the side of the abuser, and you see a lot of that too. I don't defend those cases. I won't defend those cases. As a defense attorney, I won't take those on because I don't want to cross-examine a child and try to discredit a child. I tend to believe the children, and I never wanted to make my career out of that sort of work. But not that there isn't a place for that for attorneys that do it. I just refuse to do that.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So that's like, she's not actually a lawyer, so I kind of misstepped a little bit. But she was just saying that when it comes to helping children and parents, that's one of the things that she actually does is try to assist parents needing legal help, I guess, in some of these cases. So, and that's why it's it's kind of interesting to me that having to actually do that. I'm one of those people that are like real. I'm real soft and empathetic, and it would be gut wrenching to me to hear just any tale of a kid having to go through struggles, because that's just for me naturally. I'm like, I can't, because I'm a father of four, so that scares the living bejesus out of me,
Of course.
To think about that. So let's go a little bit more and get away from that.
I understand. It's a heavy subject.
It is a heavy subject to get into, but it's sometimes, like you said, it's one that's necessary to kind of broach when you're talking about it, because again, you are trying to defend children. You're talking about kids that most of the time are really innocent in some of these things that are happening, and
they're too young to know about the things they're talking about unless it's happened to them. So when they describe these things in detail, you're like, a kid who's 8, 9, 10, 11 years old isn't making this up. They have to be able to be truth qualified before we can even really question them. We have to determine that they understand what the truth is, they understand what a lie is, before we can even get into that process with them. So we do that. Somebody, Mike, just indicates that Deb is a child advocate. Anybody that works with children knows this all too well, because when we would have the children in the investigation rooms at the state attorney's office, there would always be a victim advocate there with us, which was always invaluable, because they're skilled and they understand what's going on.
Wow, that's always been fascinating, just about the whole process, and that it sucks that they have to go through that, but this is the reality of this world that we live in. That sometimes it's a constant reminder that there's still bad people in the world, and I don't like to concentrate on that, but it is just an interesting subject to talk about. So
let's talk about car accidents.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's jump into that, because there's a lot of things that you can actually talk about going into there. So let me ask you about, like, say, one that's very familiar, because I've actually had this happen to me, but nothing came of it. But I was rear-ended. So and the thing that was really interesting for me was just the guy who did it to me. He did it to me, but that hit me. He was real open about it. He knew that he was at fault. But how many of those happen all the time where people fight it, and even though it's being hit from behind, but they'll take it to they'll fight it in court if somebody that gets hit says, hey, I was injured, I got hit from behind, neck injury or anything like that, kind of that process.
As a plaintiff's attorney, we have a couple of things we need to establish to the satisfaction of a jury or an insurance adjuster in a mediation. The two things are liability, which is blame, who's at fault in the accident, and the other thing is damage. And damages tend to be more so where an insurance company will defend on the part of its insured or its policy. They'll say, well, the person's an older person, they've got pre-existing condition, they've had prior accidents, and even though Florida law requires a very specific way of handling a pre-existing condition, they will try to, because the trick is not necessarily avoidance, but deflection.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to deflect all the blame away from themselves. But if you suppose you were rear-ended and the driver is saying, well, I was going down 75 south and I was driving my truck and yeah, I hit the back of this guy's car, but he cut in front of me and then he hit his brakes. Now, typically, if you're rear-ended in Florida, it's presumed that the other driver is guilty as a matter of law. But, sometimes people say, well, they made an aggressive stop. They're trying to get a little now. But if it's a case where somebody hits you and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I have no excuse or whatever, I apologize. That really only establishes fault for causing the accident. And for the most part, rear enders and T-bones, where what the traffic lights were doing, are pretty much no-brainers on liability, where they're going to defend because you're suing the other driver. Mm-hmm. You're not suing their insurance company. The insurance company's name's not on the complaint unless it's your own insurance company for uninsured motorist coverage. But if you're suing another driver, you sue the driver, and the jury doesn't even get to know that those lawyers are an insurance company's lawyers. They think that it's the driver's lawyer.
Oh.
So there's something called the non-joinder statute in the state of Florida. We're not allowed to sue the other driver's insurance company at the initial level. If it goes to a bad faith claim later on, then yeah. But we sue the other driver, so we need to establish why they may want to defend a case of liability where it seems clear. I don't know why they'd want to do that. Sometimes they've done it up to the eve of trial, and then we admit liability. But for the most part, you'll be sitting in a mediation in a rear-end case, and the defense will say, hey, we caused the accident. We're sorry we caused the accident. It's really unfortunate that this happened. We're sorry. Our driver is sorry. However, we think what you're asking for is not reasonable, and here's the reason why.
Yeah.
So they'll go at it more in terms of the medicals and the injuries. So they can say, yeah, we caused the accident, 100% our fault, and still have a lot of meat to try to attack and defend a case.
Yeah. So, and then one of the other interesting things that I wanted to talk about, it's been months since it started, but how did the whole pandemic kind of affect what you guys were doing as well? Because it affected everybody at first, but has a lot of your workload and that sort of thing, was it lightened, or did a lot of it maintain the same?
Let's face it. There's a certain amount of cases you're used to getting on a fairly regular basis from your referral sources and friends and colleagues. But when there are fewer cars on the road, there are fewer accidents, and there's just less work. That's just how it goes.
Wow.
The criminal cases still managed to come along.
Yeah.
Got a couple DUIs in the meantime, which I thought was interesting. But even in the age of Uber, it amazes me that people still get that. But yeah. But yeah, it's just A equals B and B equals C. Cars equal cases. B, no cars on the road. Then C, cases are going to be slow, which is how it goes.
Yeah. So that's one thing. So I guess it's slowed down just by the natural progression of everybody being at home.
And that's a wonderful thing for people. I have an old saying: just because I give you my car doesn't mean I want something bad to happen to you. But the fact of the matter is, accidents happen, and we're there. People like me, attorneys like me, we're there to help people through that process. But there are times when the process doesn't happen, and that's good for people that don't get hurt. So this has been a period of time where people have been isolating, driving less, and on the whole, it's been a good thing for people. It hasn't been great for personal injury attorneys, but it's been good for people.
There you go. That's another good way to look at it. At least that less people, safer roadways, I guess. So
yeah.
And that's I've seen it myself. I during the day I'd have another job, and I'd drive and I would see it. It looked like a ghost town. So, like now that things are starting to open back up, you start seeing more and more cars on the road. You start seeing, and I can attest to that, where there was, really, when they shut everything down at the beginning of March, and I want to say up until like the second or third week of April, it was, you could go dance on the freeway at some point. You can, if you wanted to stop.
Well, before that, I'd be used to driving on Dale Mabry from South Tampa back to my office, and I would just see 2 pretty bad wrecks a day. It was just like that. But knock on wood, since the pandemic, since I've been back on the road, I haven't really seen very much, which is once again very good for people. Some of those wrecks are pretty bad, and it's nice to see fewer of them. But I've seen some pretty nutty driving too since I've been back on the road, and people have. So typically speaking, it's only a matter of time.
Exactly. So, how have you dealt with that as far as like having actual like clients come in, or are you taking just like remote clients that have contacted you, that sort of thing? Because that's another thing I wanted to just ask about. Even though they say everything's opened up, just trying to remain safe and keeping distance and that sort of thing.
Well, the process itself can largely be handled technologically nowadays. I mean, you have Zoom meetings, and you have Zoom, you have telephonic hearings with the judge, and I've had clients that have come into the office, but it's been very few. And if that's the case, then all of the distancing is observed. Masks are worn. Distance, social, physical distance is adhered to. I have not really opened the office up to anything other than the electronic and things like that. But if a client requests to come in for certain things, I'll do that. But I'll make sure that we're observing all the social distancing. And my building is required. They've got extra regulations, so they're immaculate the way they clean. It's really, really something.
Okay, cool. That's one good thing, because again, I've been stressing this since we started, and
I've been stressing.
Yeah, because again,
that I've been stressing.
Because again, here we are, only literally just a few weeks after everything's opened back up, and you're starting to see numbers rise again. I mean, we're having record. I'm here in Texas, so we're having record cases every day. Being reported by the state, and my whole thing about with the economy being like it was, and then opening everything back up, my whole thing was what had changed, except for we need to start getting commerce going again. Other than that, I mean, they're actually talking about here in the county that I live in, using the huge convention center now to start putting in hospital beds, because there's
it's pretty scary, and one of the problems we have with Florida. I mean, I'm originally from New Jersey and the New York area, and those states have really been exemplary in keeping their numbers down. They had their peak, and then now it's all just going lower and lower for them. Not that it can't spike up again if they change the way they're doing things. But, we live in a state where people just want to be on the beach, and they want to be in church, and they want to be in restaurants, and they want to be publicly gathering. And the fact of the matter is that no matter what any economist tells you about the numbers of as far as money is concerned, it has no bearing on the microbes. The microbes control us. We're constantly at their mercy. So you can wish this thing away with money all you want, but it's it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah, and that's the scary thing to think about, because again, we want to have human interaction. I get it. People want to come in and see face to face and that sort of thing, but you gotta remember that here we are in this time right now that all these numbers are rising, and we haven't even hit the expected timetable whenever they thought all these rates were going to start going back up again. They were looking more towards wintertime, whenever things would start getting cold again, and you would be able to pass it a little bit easier. Now here we are, and we're not even in the middle of summer yet, and these numbers are going insane.
But people have been taking their cues from bad information. I mean, and I'm not picking on any one particular politician or whatever, but you've had ideas introduced that, this thing is going to die with the heat, it's going to die with the humidity. There's no reason to think that that's the case, unless you start analogizing it to something it's not. So the fact of the matter is we have really not been given good information, and that's going to be impactful. Educating people at a time like this is important. You'd ask kind of how I was coping with the fact that business had been a little slower than usual. But one of the things I started doing I thought was positive was on Tuesdays I do a broadcast, live broadcast on Facebook, where I talk about an area of the law. I try to educate people. It's called Legalese. I also have a YouTube page I actually even got into supplements to take for building the immune system because I've got some some experts I consult with, and they've made some very good suggestions and stuff like that. It's just ways that I've kind of tried to kind of get around the doldrums and try to make myself useful to people, even if I don't have the normal thing going on with bringing new cases in.
Yeah, but that's an interesting aspect about doing it, and taking the initiative to say, you know what, at least I want to do something with my knowledge, with what I know, and share it and help educate people, because again, it's I mean, that's how a lot of the things that I've learned just doing my own journey is just watching people who are educated in a certain subject and learning from them and go, okay, cool, this is great. Somebody's out there giving wisdom and knowledge, and let me start watching and taking ideas down, because again, that's that's one of the whole things that I've talked to a lot of people about, that during this time, this a lot of downtime and people being home, this should have been a time for people to take on their skills and learn new things, and learn new practices, that whenever God knows when things are going to be quote unquote normal again, that they've acquired something that they can take with them going into whatever career.
It's a good time to hone skills. My wife and I have kind of taken up the hobby of gardening during this period of time, and that was fun. We garden now, and I used to do that as a kid with family, and it was great. But there's a beautiful garden now in the yard. We worked on the little extra time we've had. Of course, this is Florida, so the bugs kick our ass. But we're still at it though, and we're still determined to be successful.
So that was cool. One of the guys who follows the show a lot, he said that during COVID he started paying his lawyer to do trademarking and writing bylaws for him. So
why not?
Yeah, why not, right? I mean,
time to reflect, time to think of the things you need, how you can expand your ability to serve people and be more efficient at it too. I mean, I never thought I'd be conducting hearings and things with Zoom. I mean,
right? I mean,
my brother's actually got the domain name ZoomMediator.com. He caught on pretty quick.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good one to have. I mean, hey, what's your website? Oh, ZoomMediator.com. Check it out. I mean, that's
pretty sharp.
That's pretty sharp. Yeah, it is. So how has that been as well as being having family doing practicing law as well? I mean, like when you guys get together, is that what you guys mostly talk about, or you try to stay away from?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic. When suppose we're visiting family and I'll start talking about a case and my brother will start yawning. Because he hears it all day long. He doesn't want to hear it but of course, I'm the younger brother, so I'm naturally the inquisitive and the always wanting the older brother's advice and opinions, and he is just like, okay, he'll give it to me. That's not a problem. But it's typically when he's relaxing, he wants to be relaxing. He doesn't want to be thinking about cases and things like that. That's what he does all day long, multiple times a day with his mediations. And he's very respected. He's been around a long time. He's great at what he does, and he's very successful at getting cases done. But you can understand why you probably wouldn't want
to. Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask, because I remember you saying that your brother was doing it, and then that's just one of the things whenever you get together with family, just shooting stuff like that, talking shop and that sort of thing. And I get it that you just don't want to mess with it too much. Not that I equate this to it, but I have two other brothers that do another show, and they do a whole nother podcast.
Oh wow!
So yeah, whenever we get around, I take it to the umpteenth level, because I do this 5 nights a week, and I do other shows as well. Wow. So whenever we get talking, I'm at a mindset where I'm like you. I don't want to. Let's talk about sports. I don't care. Let's talk about a movie or something. I don't want to talk about the whole dynamic of putting a whole, the podcast and all that stuff will come later. I mean, you need advice, of course, like you said. You hand it out to them. You say certain things, but you kind of want to just relax and go, I don't want to.
You know, he's really smart, and I value his opinion. And one of the things I do as a technique is if he doesn't want to talk about cases, I'll start discussing politics, and he'll be like, "What was that case about again?" Have him choose between the lesser of two evils.
Right. So, okay, let's start talking cases again. So, you know, Chris, this is where I usually get to the point in the show where I start asking my guest the final question, and it's kind of I kind of laid out a little bit saying yes, it is a little bit morbid what I talk about, but I just want to ask, because I find all these answers that are different and interesting. But I ask usually on my guest, when the book is said and done on Chris Debari, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, and what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for being patient. I want to be remembered for being compassionate. I want to be remembered for being kind to people. I think the world is lacking a lot of that right now, even more so than normal. I'd like to be remembered as being somebody that was an instrument of peace and of somebody who was a moderator, a bit of a mediator in me, but somebody that was compassionate, was helpful, useful, and dependable. Those are the types of things. And if people want to say handsome, then all those other things I said first are far more important.
That's
funny's good. Funny's good.
Right. That's one of the ones I haven't heard too much. When people say, "Hey, I want to be remembered for being handsome and funny." That's a good one. That's another one to add to the notes, because everybody really goes in. Not that that's a bad thing, but people really go in depth and talking about what they want to leave behind and that thing. But that's, of course, that's probably who you are in person. That's your personality. Is that I want to be that guy. Yeah, exactly. And that's,
I want to be that guy again.
There you go. So thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, man.
It was a fun time, and I love these kind of interviews because again, they become they're real informative. People learn a few things, and then of course learn that not every business person or lawyer that are really uptight. A lot of these people, people get perceptions, and it's a hard thing to break. And then when you talk to somebody kind of like yourself, and they joke around or they laugh and they go, "Wow, he's a real person." Yeah, of course he's a real person. He's not his title. He's just a person who does what's on his card. That doesn't make him what he is as a person. And and I like that.
Remember my motto, my firm's motto: it's personal to me because it's personal to you, and personal injuries are personal, and there's no question about it. They affect people differently, person to person. And I try to kind of carve out an understanding for each of my clients, and try to be a source of compassion and information and counseling, not just be the aggressive lawyer that's going to go kick the insurance companies, but a lot of it's just being effective rather than aggressive, and being personable and really listening to. That's sort of the type of customer service that I offer, and it's what I would like to be treated like if I were in that situation. Knock on wood.
Yeah. So let me ask you that. That's before I know we said this, but that's interesting that you say that. So what if something did happen, like, knock on wood, it happened to you? Yeah. Seeing that you already know the process, what would be some of the first steps you would take if you got in an injury, like, somebody T-boned you? Who knows?
Well, that's a good question. In fact, I even did a whole episode of this on my Legalese Tuesday broadcast. The first thing I would do, obviously, you want to make sure that you're functional. If you want to be very safe, you don't want to exit your vehicle until you know it's safe to do it. If you can, you need to get emergency services and the police to the scene right away. You need to make sure that injured people are being seen to. You need to photograph the hell out of the situation. Vehicles, position of vehicles, and only if it's safe. Don't go doing it in crazy traffic. Problem with traffic accidents is they happen in traffic, and other drivers won't necessarily stop, until they know they're supposed to. Exactly. But if you can do it and it's safe, make sure that you take pictures of the vehicles, the scene, landmarks, street signs, traffic lights. Then obviously, you don't want to speak to an insurance company until you've spoken to your attorney.
Mm.
He can tell you, and I will tell you, all the things you need to know. And we're often just the go-between between our clients and the insurance companies to make sure that they're not taken advantage of. Not that the insurance adjusters aren't nice people, but they're marching to their orders. Make sure that the client is going to pursue immediate appropriate diagnosis and treatment for their injuries, because much of a client's success in a case is going to depend on how well they manage themselves medically. You have the only duty you have as an injured person under the law is to seek appropriate diagnosis and treatment to mitigate your damage. And in Florida in particular, you have 2 weeks from the date of the accident to seek initial treatment, or you will not get your no-fault benefits paid. If you don't treat within the first 2 weeks, you get no PIP, no-fault benefits. That's something they started in 2012. So, those are the things I help handle: the medical issues, the insurance aspects, and the evidentiary aspects with the clients, and obviously also make sure that they have the things that they need.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. That's it.
Yeah, long answer to a short question.
Yes, but a good one, a good answer, and that's what I love to share. Is if guys, so anybody out there in the crowd, guys, you ever have been in a accident? These are the tips, man. Listen to what he's telling you. You're talking to a certified pro here, so he knows his stuff. So before we get out of here, guys, let me just give a quick shout out to check out Chris's website. You can go to www.cdbinjurylaw.com. You can see it down there. It's also in the link. The link is also in the comments. So if you go down in the comments, you can see the link there. You can click on it. So if you're in the Florida area and you're looking for an attorney, an injury attorney, there's the man for you right here. So thank you again, Chris, so much for taking the time out of your evening.
Gabriel, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's been great.
No problem. And I love these shows. Sometimes we get to share information and be informative to people. So hopefully somewhere down the line, somebody will remember what they saw in here. So you know what? I remember that. I was in an accident. Let me start taking pictures. Let me start doing all this other stuff. I remember. So I love sharing this kind of stuff with people. And plus I get to be positive about it and say, that let's be positive in life, and let's be positive about, hopefully you won't have to go through these sort of processes, but you do. If you do, you know what you got to do. So again, thank you so much, Chris. And then everybody else, sit tight. I'm just going to have have a little talk with you after the show. Everybody else, I will actually be back here at 8:30 this evening here. So in about 30 minutes, I will be back with another show. We're going to be doing another back-to-back, which is a little bit crazy, but I wanted to get this out because we're going to have an interesting talk with a gentleman. His name is Chris Engel. Chris Engel. I'm sorry. I read your name. Was looking at his name's Greg Engel. He's a police officer who actually stepped down from his position after the whole George Floyd thing, and just because he didn't agree with a lot of the policies and things that were going on, and he just couldn't do it anymore. So we're going to talk to him about that a little bit and dig deeper into his past, and a lot of things that have been going on with him has been pretty insane, because there's been so many people supporting him, and then he's had a lot of people, attack him, burn his house down. I mean, there's some crazy things. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. So everybody else, thank you for watching this show. If you come back at 8:30, you'll see me again. And then tomorrow evening, I will not be on the show, guys. Tomorrow's another guest host show. So Megan Rajan will be back, and she will be interviewing her guests tomorrow evening. I will just be technically directing. So a night off for me. I love these shows whenever I get the chance to just sit back and relax. So everybody else, I will see you later on. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, man.